There are several segmenters found in Denari: name segmenter, gift segmenter, pledge segmenter, sponsored name segmenter, and others. Segmenters are query tools that allow you to segment your data based on filters, and they give you a much expanded set of filters compared to the basic reports. There are a few rules that you first need to know to work with segments. 1. Segments produce results based on their type. For example, name segmenter uses name characteristics as filters and outputs name information. That means that it does not output specific gift information. So you can filter on things like geographic location, jurisdiction, classifications, giving statistics, etc., things that are associated with a name record. And a name segment will give you that type of information in the output. Gift segmenter filters on gift characteristics and outputs gift information, and pledge segmenter the same. Knowing this helps you determine where you need to go to produce your report. If you want a list of gifts that were given to a fund code, you would not use name segmenter because a fund code is a gift characteristic. You only use the filters that you need. All of the segments and most reports in Denari start with everyone. So for example, if you want a list of all of your names, you can create a name segment and use no filters. That will give you everyone. If you then only want those donors in a specific zip code, you will use only that filter. Since you're starting with everyone, you're reaching into the bucket and pulling out only those with that zip code. And finally, and this may not actually be a rule, but it's helpful to know that name segment is often used to produce mailing lists, but can be used for other name lists as well. So let's create a name segment. We do that by clicking on the Reports button here on the left. Then Query Tools, and then Name Segmenter. And here we see a list of segments that someone has already created. So that tells us that segments can be produced by you and saved and then run over and over again if needed. We'll add a new one here by clicking Add New. The first thing we need to do is give it a description and a segment code. These fields are just like all other records you create in Denari. The description is for you and the code is for Denari. So the description can be anything you want, but the code must be unique. You can't have two name segments with the same code. I'm just going to use training video 334 here. The 334 really has no great significance. And over here, I'm going to put my initials with an underscore and then 334. My initials, by the way, help me know that I'm the one that created this segment. Those are the only two required fields here. As mentioned earlier, you're starting with everyone. If we were to run this segment right now, we would get all names. There's two pages in a name segment: the filters page and the output page. We're currently on the filters page. This is where we define who we want in the output. And you can see the sections of filters available to us, and we'll look at some of those in more detail. But let's start with classifications. They are the codes that you have set up and assigned to some of your name records. So let's say that we want a list of names that have the classification of captain and that are assigned to them. So the first thing we're going to do is click on the Classes In button. And then we'll select that classification from the available side in the miscellaneous section here. Click the little arrow to move it to the selected side. Now, when we run this segment, we're going to get all the names of everybody that has that classification. But what if we wanted everyone who had that classification and also the classification NRM banquet? Now we can select that from the education category. And now when we run the segment, we get everyone with the captain and NRM banquet classifications. In other words, there is an AND operator between the categories. Both things must be true in order for a name record to show up in the output. Let me put NRM back for a moment. And now let's say that we want everyone with the captain classification or carpenter classification. I can select carpenter here. And now we get everyone with either the captain or carpenter classifications. There is an OR operator between classifications inside the category. Now I'll select the NRM banquet classification again. And now we get everyone with the captain class and NRM banquet or carpenter and NRM banquet. You can select as many classifications as you want in that way. Again, there is an AND operator between the categories and an OR operator inside the categories. Now let me slide the classification window to the side a little bit. And we see here that we have an Assume OR checkbox sitting next to the Classes In button. When that is checked, the AND operators between the categories turns into an OR operator. So now we get everyone with the captain or carpenter or NRM banquet classifications. The name record can have any of the three to be included in the output. To the right of Classes In, we have Classes Out. The window looks exactly the same. However, whatever we choose here will be excluded from the output. You may have noticed that one of the classifications was deceased. You could select that in Classes Out so that when you run the segment, Denari will select names defined by your other filters but will exclude anyone with a deceased classification. There are many other uses for Classes Out, but that's a good example. For now, we'll skip this gift and pledge segment fields and move down to some of the other sections below. You can expand any of these to show the filters that they contain. I'll start with giving statistics. Now let's pause just for a minute. You may remember that the first rule for a segment is that it filters on name characteristics. This section seems to be filtering on gifts. However, that is not true. It is filtering on giving statistics. The statistics describe the giving history of the donor. This is not filtering on the donor's specific gifts. That can be done in Gift Segmenter. Here, we're filtering on some of the donor's giving characteristics. We can start with probably the most popular filter by clicking the Use Gift Amount Range checkbox. That will give us two fields. We'll skip the gift segment field again for now and move down to calculation. Let's say that we want to get a list of names who have given more than $500 in a date range, and we want to add up their gifts to see if the total of all gifts in that range are more than $500. For that, we can choose summation. That opens up two more sets of fields. I'm going to put $500 here in the low amount field and a bunch of 9s in the high amount field. In the starting and ending date fields, I can enter a date range. And by the way, always use the 4-digit year when entering dates in Denari. Now, when we run the segment, Denari will add up the donor's gifts in that date range, whatever we've entered here, and give us anyone who gave between 500 and infinity or more than 500. So let's go back to the calculation field. If we select average here, we will get anyone whose average gift is more than $500 in that date range. If we chose maximum, we would get anyone whose largest gift in that date range is more than 500. And if we choose minimum, we'll get anyone whose smallest gift fits in that range. Count is a little different. It is looking at the number of gifts, not the dollar value. So if we want a list of people who gave more than 10 times this year, we can put 10 in the low value field and 99999 in the high value field. Now, let's say that we have selected the classification carpenter in classes in above, and we've entered this summation in the calculation field in 500 to 99999 with a date range. Now we will get anyone who has the classification of carpenter who also gave more than $500 in the date range. In other words, there is an AND operator between them, and that goes for all of the other filters in the segment. There is no OR here for these filters. OR only applies inside the classifications. So again, both of these things have to be true, one and the other. Moving down in this section, we find the first gift and last gift date ranges. Again, we'll ignore the gift segmenter section for now. Here you can enter either a relative date range or a fixed date range below. And this filter will give you the list of names of all the people who gave for the very first time in that date range, and then of course the last gift is going to give you a list of names whose very last gift falls inside that date range. Again, remember that you don't have to use this filter, and if you use any other filters in the segment, there will be an AND operator between them. And then below that we have the largest gift range, and it filters on a dollar amount. And then finally the gift count section. Gift count will do kind of the same thing that the count is doing up above, but this just gives you a little bit more flexibility and allows you to kind of zero in a little more. So let me close the giving statistics section. We won't go through all of the sections below. You'll need to take some time to explore, but you can see that there are a number of options for filters to produce a list of names. And if you have any questions about how these filters work, please contact tech support. I've been skipping over the gift segment and pledge segment fields. These are covered in more detail in the videos on those topics. However, I will point out that those fields allow you to expand your filter capabilities for name segmenter. As an example, let's say that you want to do a mailing to anyone who made a donation at your last fundraising effort. You created an appeal code to represent that event, and you assigned it to the gifts in gift entry. We can't filter on a gift characteristic because the appeal code is a gift characteristic, and you won't find that in name segmenter. You'll find that in gift segmenter. So you can create a gift segment that finds the gifts given to that appeal. You can then select that gift segment here in name segment, and Denari will then first run the gift segment, find the gifts that are identified by that appeal code, and then run the name segment and give you those names based on those gifts. We can take it a step further. I'll expand the giving statistics section again, and in the gift amount range section we can select a segment here and enter our filters to find gifts of more than $500 in a date range. If we select this gift segment in that field, now Denari will only give you names of people who gave gifts more than $500 to that appeal code. Denari will use the filter of the gift segment to narrow the range down to only those gifts given to that appeal code. And the name segment will then apply the greater than 500 filter to that set of gifts. It works the same way for a pledge segment. We can use that to expand the filters to include pledge filters to produce a list of names. Let's stop here. In the second video, we'll move to the Output tab and discuss the output options there.